Hi, this is Paul Pactus, Chief Executive Officer of Long Island Cares, welcoming you back to another episode of Breaking Bread, our program right here on YouTube and on wherever you get your podcasts. You could hear it too. But today I'm very excited to welcome Jeff Yablon to the show. Jeff is a science teacher at Hop Hog High School. He's been involved with Long Island Cares for a few years now. In fact, he's a member of our board of directors.
Paul, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Jeff, you've been aware and involved in Long Island Cares for quite a couple of years now, because I remember a few years back hearing about you and your involvement and your interest in the issue. So what exactly inspired you to join our board of directors? Because now you've been on the board for what, like 2 years, 3 years?
7.
7 years. Shame on me.
No, 7 years.
7 years is really?
Maybe even longer.
Amazing.
I've had
Wow.
2 kids since.
What inspired you to come on our board of directors 7 years ago?
So it's interesting. I've always been involved with community service and thinking about doing stuff like that within school and making kids aware of all sorts of issues through a community group called Interact, which is a high school club that's affiliated with Rotary. And we did a lot of great things. And for me, I always kind of came back to, we brought in Hunger 101 and a number of programs to have students become aware of what's going on outside of their small little world and their technology. And Hunger 101 really struck a chord with me because of what it did and how it felt. As a high school wrestler, as a college wrestler, and doing other things, hunger was one of those things that was self-imposed, in some level. But to think about how miserable it is to be when you don't have a choice of what you can eat or when you're going to eat was far greater of a concern. And growing up, my mom and dad would always take us into the city around Christmas time or Thanksgiving to do community service with some of the city agencies that my father had worked with. So I had witnessed and seen hunger firsthand at a real level, that the people coming in, this was their meal. And to provide it on a holiday was great, but even at an early age, I said, so what do those people do other days?
Right, when there's no holiday.
When there's no holiday and we're not collecting, and essentially the other 11 months. And it kind of stayed with me as I got older. We did summer picnics in Sunken Meadow that the city would do. They would arrange and they'd bus tons of people out from the city, all senior citizens, and give them a beautiful day at Sunken Meadow State Park with a full, amazing kind of barbecue type of meal. And those experiences of seeing all these people, how appreciative they were and how much they really truly needed that food, and if there was a little extra they would take it home and nobody was holding it. It was like, please get it out to them. And so it kind of just stuck with me as I got older, and had been teaching for quite some time. I said, the younger kids don't see it, they're not aware, they don't know, or maybe they do. But I also stepped up and thought, well, I'm old enough to actually contribute now to society. Instead of just taking and doing my own life, what can I do to give back? Maybe at a higher level than just helping kids in a high school see it, but maybe on a broader scale on Long Island. And for me, it was kind of a natural fit, because I'd been listening to Harry Chapin and his music for years. I mean, for as long as I was a little kid, we were going to that concert, the famous concert in Eisenhower Park.
July 16th, 1981.
Yeah, we were going, and I was like, what? How come? And I was pretty young, and so it made a bigger impression on me than I thought it did. And then later in life, it kind of it kept percolating up, and I said, well, maybe I should try to contribute or be involved at the board level. And so I got a little courage and said, let's get involved. I should know something at this point in my life that might be helpful.
And lucky for us, 7 years ago, that you did get involved. So this all started with you having an interest and then bringing one of our Hunger 101 community education programs to Hop Hog High School, where in that program, as we've discussed on Breaking Bread before, it's an opportunity for people to know more about the population on Long Island that struggles with hunger and food insecurity, and we go through certain exercises in bringing this to the school. It's been very successful. As a teacher, member of the faculty, put aside for a second a member of the board for the past 7 years. I'll never forget that now. How do you see school system on Long Island encouraging students, exposing students to a number of social problems? It doesn't have to necessarily be hunger, but in our case it is. How do you get your students in your classes at Hauppauge High School interested in this issue and getting them involved?
Great question. It's kind of a mixed bag. Some kids come to it and they're very aware. Some kids come to any issue because of really what's happening in their home, and not necessarily food issues, but
right.
their parental involvement in community service, whether it comes through their place of employment, providing opportunities for them to see community service at any level. It doesn't matter what they're involved in. It's their awareness that's outside of sadly, their phone.
Yeah.
What do they see? And so for me, in the classroom, it's pretty easy. We have pretty much an ongoing food drive from the beginning of the year to the end of the year.
All faculty or just you?
Me and a lot of my science colleagues that I work with, because I have their ear more often. And so I said, well, how hard would it be to put a box in your room?
Right.
And they say, it's not, if you pick it up. I was like, okay, I'll pick it up. They do things that they're involved in that they like, and I support them in the same way. So some of it's driven by personal passion and persistence to bring it to the forefront. In my case, as a science teacher, and specifically biology, nutrition, how it relates to your health, what's going on in your body, and then from just the really sciencey biochemical stuff that's happening, it comes up often throughout the course of the year. And whenever the opportunity arises, I say, hey, look at what's going on. If you're not eating right, you can't do these things right. So the beginning starts off with making sure that they're eating breakfast, which most high school kids don't particularly like getting up any earlier than they absolutely have to. And food is like a secondary thought. But after we talk about it a little bit, they buy into the idea that I probably need to eat breakfast so that I can focus and do my job, right? And I say, there's breakfast downstairs. And it comes up initially maybe with, well, there's no reason why any of you are going to go without eating breakfast. It could be free or reduced lunch, breakfast and lunch in our school served. So if you're in that group, get your breakfast, because it's important to your studies and what you do and how you learn and what happens. If you're not in that group and you're too lazy to get up, get down there in the morning and swipe your card and get something to eat. And then in my room, there's always pretzels, and granola bars, and there's no judgment to it. If you're hungry, go eat. I tell them they kind of need to be, eat meat and eat healthy. It's preferred no Pringles and potato chips, because they're very annoying when you're teaching.
When I was going to high school, there was no food in the classroom. No one brought in pretzels or granola bars, but frankly, by having it there and offering it to your students, you don't have to be hungry to take it. You could just, I just want a snack. It's depending upon whatever time of the day they're in your class. Look, I remember in school by 3 o'clock in the afternoon,
you were hungry.
I was hungry. I was wiped. I was like anything, run to the cafeteria, whatever. So it's not, in your opinion, it's not really a heavy lift to get students involved in social issues?
It's not a heavy lift to bring it to their attention. It's not part of our curriculum per se that we have to do that. Although I will say many districts, including Hauppauge, has incorporated in order to graduate, they need 20 hours of community service.
Oh, okay.
They usually wait to their senior year, which is not necessarily the best scenario, and then they're scrambling for things to do. But I get mostly 9th and 10th graders, and so early on, they're hearing like, you could be involved in this, you could be involved in this. Have you seen this, website? And so for me, it's an ongoing discussion. On Fridays, I wear the famous, Long Island Care shirts. I don't have a beautiful purple. That's next. It's coming. I kind of have an orangish one, but to get them involved to see like, well, why do you wear that? I said, well, we dress nicely every day, and it's professional. I wear it with a shirt and tie. And then they ask, and the idea is just to bring up conversation. The more conversations you can have, the more awareness builds. So if they hear it once, it's gone. If they hear it twice, maybe it'll say, but the third, fourth time, their interest is piqued, and they'll say, what can I do? And not all of them. Some have no idea. But ultimately, it's finding a few kids that are interested. And if you have a few kids that are interested, they may set up things like, it goes back a while now, but a couple of years back, we did a Hoops for Hunger.
Okay.
There was one student who was in Interact, involved in Interact, and so she'd been hearing me kind of pound the drum for years, and she loved basketball, and so she set up a faculty game, kid game, Hoops for Hunger,
Okay.
and they just played basically a fun game of basketball, and it raised a ton of money and brought in a ton of food. That was really on her own, her own desire to do it. So if you find that student who has the motivation, they have the time, and they can do better than what you can possibly imagine. You just kind of guide them and get out of their way.
It was on her own, but having been sort of sensitized by you, because as her teacher, you take the time and talk about the issue of hunger. And yes, you're absolutely right. You could have 30 kids in the classroom. If you reach one, and if one comes back and says, there's something I'd like to do, you've piqued my curiosity. I had no idea that there were 259,000 people here on Long Island who are struggling with hunger, including 77,000 children. Just getting to one student is huge. It absolutely is huge. When you get feedback in your class about community service, or any of the classes get feedback, I have to assume that this issue of hunger and food insecurity may not be at the top of the students' list. It may not be something that they think of perhaps as more readily as drug addiction.
Or, drug addiction or breast cancer awareness. Breast cancers touch thousands of people.
Right.
And there's a fantastic campaign, and it's incredibly important, as we cross different milestones and work to solve problems. That one has a lot of attention. We do struggle with some aspects of getting it to the top of the list.
Right.
But they all know somebody who maybe skips meals, and they say, well, I skipped a meal because of this, or they won't say it, but I don't like to eat during school. So I think it's in their mind. They understand it, but they don't think, not in my yard. And
Right.
it turns out
Right.
when they get some numbers, they see, wow, there's a high percentage of students within our own school who are on free and reduced lunch. And that's an opportunity to have a discussion that doesn't shame those people, but that sometimes becomes their fear. That, I don't want to say, oh yeah, I could use, or I use that program, because there might be some shame associated with it. And so removing that stigma is important.
As you said, if you use the, breast cancer example.
Which is very important.
Yeah, because there's a lot of students who have relatives, whether it be a mom or an aunt or someone, who may be diagnosed with breast cancer, but not everyone is struggling with hunger. This has been so enlightening to me, Jeff. I have to apologize because we're running out of time. We're going to have you come back because there's so much more I want to talk about, the issue of the schools and being involved in hunger relief and sensitizing more. So I want to thank Jeff Yablon for being our guest today on Breaking Bread. But before I let you go, I also want to plug an event that Long Island Cares is sponsoring. We're hosting on Friday, September 13th. It's a night of reggae and roots music at Mulcahy's in Wantor. We are bringing to the stage K-Bong and Johnny Cosmic of the very popular roots band Stick Figure. Tickets right now are $30 in advance, can be bought on our website. Just go to licares.org/reggae and you can get your ticket. We hope to see you there on Friday, September 13th. And thank you again for joining us right here on YouTube. If you like the program, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd love to have you back every time we upload a new episode of Breaking Bread. You can also listen to us as a podcast on Anchor Podcast, even on Spotify and iTunes. Anywhere you listen to your podcast, you can download Breaking Bread. We'll see you next time. This is Paul Pachter again. Thanks for breaking bread at Long Island Cares.